A deal so good, it's eerie.
Transform your home into a showplace for the holidays with custom draperies from Gottschalk's. Buying lining and fabric direct means substantial savings to Gottschalk's, and we pass the savings on to you. For example, our 10-foot by 84-inch Superba antique satin drapery, fully lined, is only $198.50. Casablanca, a popular California casement, same size, only $189. For example, our 10-foot by 84-inch Superba antique satin is only $198.50. Casablanca, a popular California casement, same size, only $189.83. And we do more than draperies, always at everyday low prices. Call Gottschalk's now. We won't be undersold.
Dan Taylor and Channel 30 Action News Sports, part of a winning team.
The following is a special presentation of ABC Sports.
Baseball is about homecoming. It is a journey by theft and strength, guile and speed. Out around first to the far island of second, where foes lurk in the reeds and the green sea suddenly grows deeper. Then to turn sharply, skimming the shallows, making for a shore that will show a friendly face, a color, a familiar language. And at third, to proceed no longer by paths indirect, but straight to home.
Hello, friend, welcome me home again. Well, I've been away, but that's all over now. Say I can stay for October now. Stay a while and play.
In the first two games of the World Series, the San Francisco Giants have run into some tremendous pitching. Dave Stewart of the A's threw a shutout in Game 1. And Mike Moore in the Oakland bullpen did the job in Game 2. At the plate, punch has been provided by people like Dave Parker and Terry Steinbach. And the A's have won the first two games of the World Series and are halfway to their first world title since 1974. The Giant dugout full of long faces all weekend.
Hello, friend, welcome me home again. I know I've been away, but that's all over now. Isn't it nice to be home again? Over here, it's clear.
And tonight, the Giants home to host the A's in Game 3.
Hello, old friend.
And home for the Giants, one of the most spectacular vistas on this continent, any continent. Downtown San Francisco in the background, and we zoom into Candlestick Park in the southeastern corner of this city. For the first time in 27 years, a World Series game will be played in Candlestick Park. The Battle of the Bay continues. Game 3 of the 1989 World Series, the Oakland Athletics against the San Francisco Giants. I'm Al Michaels. Welcome to Game 3. It's been dominant Oakland pitching, of course, in the first two games. So Roger Craig has made some changes in the Giants lineup. Ken Oberkfell, the great pinch hitter, will start at third base. Matt Williams moves from third base to shortstop. Jose Uribe is on the bench. Pat Sheridan takes over for Candy Maldonado in right field. Now, the Giants, of course, are faced with a formidable task, having to win 4 or 5 in essence to win the world title. It has become less uncommon, though, in recent years for teams to overcome a 2-love deficit. Most recently, it was done by the New York Mets in 1986 against the Boston Red Sox, and it was done the year before as well in 1985 by Kansas City against St. Louis. So the Giants tonight will be sending Don Robinson to the mound, and for Oakland, it will be Bob Welch, and there's no designated hitter in effect in the National League Park. Let me turn now to Tim McCarver. And, you know, Tim, we talked in Game 1, the final score was 5-0, but there was a key early play involving Terry Kennedy dropping a throw from Will Clark at the plate. We go back to Game 2. The score was 5-1, but there were 2 key plays early in that one as well.
Well, you don't often think of key plays in a 5-1 ball game, but let's go back to the top of the third inning. Will Clark, the batter. The Giants have not had the lead in these two games. A 3-2 count, a split finger fastball by Mike Moore, pounced on by Terry Steinbach, the Oakland catcher. But look at the tough throw that he had to complete the play with Brett Butler running between him and Clark. Flash forward to the bottom of the fourth inning. Dave Parker barely by inches just misses a home run. Candy Maldonado with the hesitation, allowing Jose Canseco to score, and he fails to get Dave Parker at second base. So the Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we haven't heard.
The ultimate driving machine. What a luxury car should be. Engineered like no other car in the world. A car you can believe in. These days, it seems that every luxury automaker has some sort of impressive slogan. But there's one claim that makes all the others seem insignificant. A claim that no automaker but Acura is entitled to make. #1 in customer satisfaction, 3 years in a row.
The headache feels like a rubber band going around my head. It's the temples, the muscles down the neck. I have pain. I hurt.
Today, Darnell Moore is trying extra-strength Tylenol gel caps. For pain like his, why take aspirin or ibuprofen when nothing works better than Tylenol gel caps?
No throb, no headache, and definitely no rubber band. I'm going to go with the gel caps. Gel caps work.
Extra-strength gel caps, only from Tylenol. For everyday pain, nothing works better.
You know what? My dad bought a new car. So did mine. My dad got a V8. My dad got a V12. My dad got a sunroof. My dad got a convertible. My dad got a CD player. My dad got a car phone. My dad got Michelin. Michelin? Well, my mom's prettier than your mom.
Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires.
Good morning, America.
7 o'clock, you're waking up America. You just go on in the morning, you chat, you tell people what's going on in the world, start their day off right, make them feel comfortable, get them ready to face the world.
Good morning, America.
Friday's favorite funny guys are held hostage.
He has 20 sticks of dynamite strapped to his chest.
They're not purely decorative.
Perfect strangers.
Could you tape his mouth?
Then it's a hot Just the 10 of Us all Friday.
can't beat the feeling.
Weekends at my morning place. I like to take it slow. Get my breakfast fast, then I make it last. It's the best time that I know. Relaxing with a good time. Great taste. You know there's only one place for my weekend McMorning. McDonald's.
Saturday, who's the biggest of them all?
Who's your little friend?
Wow, you're almost as big as my mom.
You must bring her by.
Mr. Belvedere, then.
I got a C on my lab report. I've never gotten a C in my life. Neither have I, no matter how hard I try.
Living dolls, then.
Something is scaring the women of Palm Beach. On the ABC Saturday Mystery, Burt Reynolds is B.L. Stryker.
From Channel 30 Action News, this is a special report.
Hello, I'm Rich Rodriguez. Well, you probably felt it about 15, 16 minutes ago. There was an earthquake. A strong earthquake shook a large portion of Northern California this afternoon. Lamps fell and buildings swayed back and forth in San Francisco and Santa Maria, in St. Helena, and even in the Los Angeles area, they say. And of course, we did feel it here in Fresno. The quake lasted 15 seconds and was felt at Candlestick Park. Well, the World Series is to be played this afternoon between the San Francisco Giants and the Oakland A's. As you probably realize, we are seeing Roseanne right now. That's because the broadcast has been knocked off the air for a short time in San Francisco. They're trying to get it hooked up again so you can see the picture of the ball game. We don't know if the game is still going to go as scheduled at 5:30. We've had a number of phone calls here at Channel 30. Folks in Los Banos tell us that their power is out in Los Banos. They said that the quake shook for about a good minute. Now, we've also had reports that they felt it in Corcoran. We said in Los Banos, Dos Palos, and Merced. Now, I've just been received this report. The epicenter is near Hollister. Now, that's a very common area. It's very close to the San Andreas fault line. Hollister, they tell me, is where the epicenter is. Usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes before the U.S. Geological Survey can accurately tell us. The folks in Pasadena, too, can tell us where the epicenter is and how strong a quake it has been. Again, the earthquake rocked the San Francisco Bay Area this afternoon. That's why you're seeing Roseanne right now. We'll try and get back to you in a few minutes to let you know, first of all, how folks are in San Francisco and whether the game will go on as scheduled. Until then, we'll be back in a few minutes.
This has been a special report from Channel 30 Action News. We now return to our regularly scheduled program, In Progress.
We interrupt our regular program schedule to bring you a special report from ABC News.
Good evening, I'm Ted Koppel. Let me try and explain to you what must already be obvious to the millions of you who tuned in to watch the World Series tonight. Take a look at that live picture. That is from San Francisco. That fire presumably has been caused by an earthquake that knocked both the network broadcast of the World Series off the air and has been causing apparently some considerable damage in the San Francisco Bay Area. That fire is the only one that we are aware of right now, but what we do know from reports from the area is that a number of television stations were knocked off the air. Our own owned and operated station out there, KGO, which you were just watching, was briefly knocked off the air. Those who were broadcasting, Al Michaels and the others who were broadcasting the World Series to you, that signal was knocked off the air. And we have heard unconfirmed reports that at Candlestick Park, where the third game of the World Series was to be played this evening, there have been some injuries. What we wanted to do was just get on the air and let you know what we do know, which at the moment is very scant information, and to assure you that as soon as we get further information, we will be back on the air with that. To repeat, there has been an earthquake in the San Francisco Bay Area, apparently with one aftershock. The quake itself lasted about 15 seconds, has caused at least one fire that we are aware of, and some damage. There may have been some injuries at Candlestick Park. The World Series game that you presumably tuned in to watch this evening has been knocked off the air. I can't even tell you at this point whether the game is going on at this moment, but we'll get more information to you as soon as we have it. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington, and hold on just 1 minute. We're looking at a live picture now, clearly from a... this is the east portion. What we are going to be seeing in a moment is the east portion of the Bay Bridge. Obviously, we're not seeing it, but the east portion of the Bay Bridge has collapsed. So apparently that earthquake out in San Francisco, a very serious one. As I said a moment ago, as soon as we have more hard information, we will gather it together and come back on and let you know what's going on. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For now, good evening.
This special report came to you from ABC News. We now resume our regular program schedule.
Preparations are proceeding now in San Francisco for resumed coverage of the game number 3 of the World Series. We will get back to it as soon as we possibly can. In the meantime, we will keep you informed of the situation.
I'm an animal!
Tom Cruise and Paul Newman.
I love this.
The Color of Money, Sunday. Saturday, October 28th, Telly Savalas is back as Kojak.
He's the only one who's got all the answers.
The season premiere of the ABC Saturday Mystery, October 28th.
Discover cleaning so advanced, it's engineered to perform like it never has before. New Triple Action All. So highly engineered, stain-fighting enzymes power out stains. Color-safe bleach inspires white. Brighteners excite colors to new heights. Far beyond simply clean. Today there is new Triple Action All, engineered for a new all clean like you've never seen.
Hey, where's the food? How about tacos? Yeah, tacos! 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 Tacos!
Taco Bell introduces Tacos to Go. Now get our original tacos in a 10-pack for $5.89 or a 6-pack for just $3.54. Packed and ready to go. Anywhere you've got a few hundred friends. Tacos to Go.
Do a double deal at Taco Bell today. Take a twin pack and save.
Channel 30, Kfsn TV, Fresno.
What would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me? Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song. I will try not to sing out of key. Yeah. Oh, baby, how you all I need is my buddy. I say I'm gonna get high. Oh, yeah.
If you can imagine a vehicle that looks like this, can handle like this, and provide room like this, you either have an excellent imagination or you have a Ford Taurus wagon.
See your dealer now for low financing or special savings on 1990 Ford Taurus.
Contact first made news in 1961. In 1976, the news was too Sudafed. Today, there's new Co-Advil. Co-Advil has what no other cold product has. The pain reliever in Advil plus a proven decongestant. A combination never available before in just one tablet. Co-Advil is so effective it can relieve nasal congestion, sinus pressure, and the aches and pains of your cold, all without drowsiness. Read label before using. New Co-Advil. Advanced formula for cold and sinus relief.
Happy, happy birthday, baby.
We interrupt our regular program schedule to bring you a special report from ABC News.
I'm Ted Koppel. There has been a rather strong earthquake in Northern California, so strong, in fact, that it has, among other things, knocked out all the power, or much of the power, at Candlestick Park, where the third game of the World Series was being played. But in the overall scheme of things, that may be the very least of things that has happened today. Let me show you a piece of video that just came in a few minutes ago. This is, if you look carefully there, you will see that the upper span, that's the Bay Bridge that connects Oakland and San Francisco, the upper span of that bridge has collapsed there, at least the segment has collapsed. As that video moves in a little bit closer, you'll see there is at least one vehicle down there that apparently slid off the edge of the segment on the left and is now trapped in the crevice there of that segment that is down at an angle. There are many vehicles still on that lower span of the Bay Bridge. You can see people walking around there. They don't seem to be in any immediate danger, but the tremors that shook much of San Francisco, apparently the quake lasted for about 10 to 15 seconds, and then there was an afterquake. I have on the line with me two of my colleagues, Bruce Hall and Mark Nelson. Mark Nelson is out at Candlestick Park. They're on by phone. This is a live shot from our affiliate, our owned and operated station in San Francisco, KGO, and you can see that there are at least two major fires that seem to be in progress there. But I'll tell you what, let me go instead now to Bruce Hall, who is at our bureau in San Francisco. And Bruce, maybe you can just give me a sense of what happened, when it happened, and how you became aware of the fact that there was an earthquake in progress.
All right, I was getting ready to record the World Series, and the first thing, there were some tremors, which didn't seem unusually strong. It just seemed like a regular kind of earthquake. Then the signal went off the air, and then the whole building shook extremely violently. It was going back and forth and up and down, and this, I would think, for about 5 or 6 seconds.
Drop to you anytime, Ted.
And I went to a doorway and stayed there. We have had some minor damage around the building. There are cracks in the plaster. We lost a plate glass window out of the bureau on the other side of the building, and there were bricks kicked up, about 6 or 8 of them, from right in front of the entrance here at KGO.
Let me just interrupt you for a moment. You were looking, while Bruce Hall was talking, our audience was looking, Bruce, at some live video that was apparently being shot from a helicopter, and it looked as though one of the major highways there was rather severely buckled. We are getting preliminary information from Candlestick Park, but perhaps it's best to go to my colleague, Mark Nelson, who is out at Candlestick. What's happening at the moment, Mark?
Well, Ted, people are milling around inside the stadium. The field is empty. None of the players are out. There are 9 towers that light the stadium. From my vantage point, I only see one row on one of the towers that appears to have any power. Outside, where all the trailers, the television trucks are, engineers are frantically trying to hook up power, auxiliary power. I can tell you that in the trailer I'm sitting in now, there is none. I'm on one of 3 working phones. When the tremor hit, and it was a pretty wild, violent tremor, it lasted for maybe 10 to 15 seconds. People started screaming and running, and there was a great deal of confusion. That's about all I can tell you right now.
All right, Mark, I'll tell you what, let's move on, and we are sort of moving in and out with different colleagues of ours as we become aware of the fact that we're able to communicate with them either by phone. I am told that we can get, I hope, both sound and picture from Rick Lozano of KABC Sports. Rick, can you hear me?
I sure can, Ted.
And you are there with San Francisco police officer?
Yes, we have Officer Dwayne Collins with us, and first I should tell you that we just established audio contact with you very recently, so I haven't been able to hear all that you've said so far, Ted. I can tell you that part of the San Francisco Bay Bridge, the Bay Bridge has collapsed in a certain section. Unconfirmed reports of injury at this time. Here at Candlestick Park, as soon as the tremor struck, people started heading for the exits. It was a wild scene here for a short time. Personally, I was in a hallway, an enclosed hallway, and it was quite a scene in there, something I've never experienced before. With me, Officer Dwayne Collins of the San Francisco Police Department. Officer, what can you tell us at this time from an official standpoint?
Well, nothing at an official standpoint. Everything is still very sketchy. They're still trying to find out what happened. We do know that there was a collapse on the Bay Bridge, and we do have unconfirmed reports that some buildings have collapsed on the south side of Market Street.
What about here at Candlestick Park? Any reports of injuries or structural damage to the stadium?
No reports of injuries at this point. There's a few shaken up people, obviously. And as far as visible injury, visible damage to the stadium, we haven't found any.
Living in San Francisco in the Bay Area, you're accustomed to earth tremors. How strong would you estimate this one to have been?
This was a pretty good shaker. It was well over 5, probably 6.
Ted, I can tell you, living in Southern California and Los Angeles, that this one measured at least as strong as the Whittier quake of a couple of years ago. The epicenter has not yet been pinpointed, although it did not take very long for the main thrust of the jolt to hit here. So I would imagine that the epicenter was quite nearby. That's going to do it for now, Ted. We'll throw it back to you in New York.
Rick, thanks very much. You're both pretty good at guesstimating your Richter scale, because we now have some preliminary indications that the Richter reading was actually of 6.5. So this was a fairly hefty, indeed a very hefty earthquake. And I am told that we have some street scenes from San Francisco. If we have those ready, let's take a look at them right now. We are looking at these for the first time as you see them.
Burglar alarms were set off. The power lines were swaying. As I said, power was cut off to this area. So was phone service. We're told now that some phone service has been restored here. You can see people were screaming. You could definitely feel the quake. I was also just told by a police officer that there are some cracks in the upper rim of Candlestick. Half-inch cracks is what he is saying in the upper rim of Candlestick. And they have also closed the overpass now on Jamestown into Candlestick.
All right, I must tell you that among the things that is happening here is that we are getting snatches of information from different parts of town, and it's like the old legend of the blind man touching the elephant. Depending on which part of the animal they are touching, they are describing different scenes. You can see, on the one hand, people there in the street scenes almost in a festive mood, but I must tell you, this was a serious earthquake. There has been serious damage. If you've been with us for the past few minutes, you will have seen that the upper span of the Bay Bridge, at least a significant segment of it, collapsed. There are reports of buildings having collapsed in San Francisco. We have seen, and as I say, if you've been with us, you have seen some rather significant fires that apparently have been caused by the earthquake. As for injuries or possibly even fatalities, I mentioned to you earlier that there were some initial reports of some injuries at Candlestick Park, and you probably just heard the voice of a KGO reporter who was talking about some cracks in the superstructure at Candlestick Park. I must tell you, however, that I have a piece of wire copy here which is saying that a Giant spokesman said police were advising fans to remain at Candlestick Park precisely because the park is considered to be structurally sound. So just to summarize for you, and we are trying to make contact with my ABC Sports colleague Al Michaels, who was obviously in the park to report on the third game of the World Series, but who is now there to report on a rather significant news story. Let me just bring you up to speed again. Just as the game was about to begin, there was an earthquake that apparently lasted about 15 seconds and was felt as far away as 90 miles. There is a piece of videotape that was recorded, I guess about a half hour ago or so, and you can see that there is a segment of the upper span of the Bay Bridge. That is the bridge that connects Oakland, California with San Francisco. There is a segment of that bridge that has collapsed. We have reports of a number of buildings that have collapsed in and around the San Francisco area. And quite frankly, what we are doing at the moment is just trying to gather that information so that we can put it into some kind of coherent form for you. I should point out that until we do that, all I can give you is sort of the same summary that I've been giving you until now. I don't see any particular point in babbling on here and just telling you what's going on until we get some more information. So let's close it up now. A 6.5 reading on the Richter scale. You can see some video there. I gather that's live video of Candlestick Park.
And we are feeling a shock right now, and that shaking in your picture is being amplified by the tremor that has just gone through the top of the stadium, and we are live. They're taking the bases off 8:41 Eastern, 5:41, and we just felt it out here. We're at ground level. And now 6.5 Richter is what ABC is reporting this shock to be. And it is quite obvious now, that this is not it never has been a baseball story. It is much larger than the events going on at Canada.
All right. What you saw is self-explanatory. The game has clearly been delayed, if not called off the evening. We'll tell you that clearly, given the context of everything else that's happening here tonight, is one of the lesser aspects of the story. But you can see the crack in the sidewalk there. Again, a rather massive earthquake, 6.5 on the Richter scale. Fires in San Francisco, a segment of the Bay Bridge down. The game delayed, deferred. Possibly even canceled, and we will give you more information as soon as it becomes available to us and we can put it into some sort of coherent form. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. We'll be back a little bit later.
Hello, I'm Rich Rodriguez in the Channel 30 Action Newsroom. As you have seen, a major earthquake has rocked Northern California. We have felt it up and down Central California. There are reports that even Los Angeles and the Santa Maria area along the coast has felt it. Now, ABC is reporting that the epicenter was in Hollister, and that the first report that it measured 6.5 on the Richter scale. We have a report from the Office of Emergency Services that it was actually 6.9 on the Richter scale. Just to kind of put a gauge in there, it was 5.7 in Whittier a couple of years ago. Down in Southern California, I believe the Sylmar quake in Los Angeles was at 7.1. That was back in the late 60s. Now we have some quotes from folks over in Coalinga who felt it. A fellow with the fire department describes it only as a fair-sized earthquake.
Robert Nancy Osborne again. I just heard...
Now you are seeing pictures here in San Francisco. That is a Bay Bridge, and you can see that one of the sections is dropped. We have no idea as far as injuries. We also got a report out of Candlestick Park that the upper level of the park had some pretty big cracks in it.
I thought you were the other operator, the real operator.
Again, the epicenter was in Hollister, and it is measured 6.9 on the Richter scale. They have felt it all over Northern California. We are told that Sacramento felt the aftershock swaying enough to make people dizzy. Of course, with an earthquake like this, it's always hard for information to come in. You're always sitting, you're waiting. People are calling in, you're getting information from here, from there. We understand in Los Banos that power is out. All over Merced County, power lines are down.
Okay.
It is quite a time at this hour. Again, it lasted about 15 seconds, and it happened just a couple minutes after 5 o'clock. Now, the emergency services coordinator of the local Red Cross here in Fresno is now mobilizing his volunteers for possible action. Right now, he says he's phoning all volunteers, and he's putting them on alert. He's also ascertaining available resources that Fresno can offer the Bay Area. We are told that not only San Francisco has a couple of fires going right now. We showed you some of the freeway shots. We're also told that there are other parts up in the Bay Area, up in the Northern California area, that have also felt it. Well, we'll try and put our information together, and we'll get back to you just as soon as possible. All right, we go to San Francisco and a live report from one of our sister stations, KGO TV.
You know whether or not that's related to this? No, we don't right now. Details are sketchy. We're getting so many reports of so much damage in every direction that we're giving you what we have as we get it. Okay, did you feel the quake yourself? Yes, we did. As we drove in the car, as I said, it first of all felt like a very bad blowout, a flat tire. And then all three of us in the vehicle noticed that there were pieces, crumblings coming from the top of the bridge. And one man described it as being in the twilight zone and just not having any sense of reality. It was all so bizarre, all so frightening and scary. We had many different descriptions from people as they drove over. We were just about several hundred feet in front of the cars that were trapped in that portion behind us, so we came very close to being in the middle of it there. Again, the road is closed, the bridge is closed, there's fear of an aftershock, and they're keeping cars off this entire stretch of roadway.
Okay, Leslie, thank you very much. Ana Chavez, you've been standing by patiently with a map to help us.
Obviously having some transmission problems up in San Francisco. Once again, We remind you that the earthquake registered 6.9 on the Richter scale. It was, the epicenter was in the Hollister area. Again, quite possibly with a 6.9 earthquake, we are going to have a number of aftershocks. Now, if you're new to the area or you're not really familiar with any kind of earthquake, if you take a look at the front of your phone book, a lot of good information in your phone book. You might go around and check your house, check your gas fittings. And it's a very easy way of just going and seeing if you smell anything. You can also apply some liquid with some soap to see if that works. A number of different things. But your best source of information is that of that old phone book, front pages. All right, we're going to try and gather some more information. We will be back with you in just a few minutes all right, let's go to ESPN in San Francisco for more.
Francisco side, and so obviously it's more than just the bridge. I mean, anybody who is endeavoring to get out of town at 5 o'clock, that's a long stretch. You're talking a couple miles out to where the bridge itself collapsed into the part that went into San Francisco. That's, I believe that was not 101 itself, but 80. But at this point,
it's not important.
At this point, it's not important. Those pictures are, you know, in the stadium at the time, I would say, well, you and I were sitting next to each other at the time. We didn't have much to say. I would say that was about, what, 12, 15?
15 seconds max, yeah.
15 seconds. And at first, the first 5 seconds.
That's a Coast Guard helicopter heading out towards the bay. I just wanted to make that point.
Of course, to Richmond, where we saw some fires at the refineries towards Fremont.
Game has been officially postponed by Commissioner Fay Vincent, and I don't believe that was a tough call at all. And that is not, that's buried in the newspaper right now.
Right. I think that, you know, at any rate, in the stadium for about 15 seconds. First 5 seconds, you weren't really sure. And the scoreboard, you could see that move.
Now, I'm told by wire reports say that sections of this ballpark have collapsed. I didn't see it.
No.
You didn't see it. So if that is the case, and if you're watching at the Associated Press, this ballpark is up. There are thousands still inside. There might be damage you're going to find later, but it's still safe. We're standing about 150 feet from it, and we feel safe.
Thank you.
Okay, we were just looking at the Commissioner of Baseball asking that fans apparently leave Candlestick Park in an orderly way. The game has been suspended. We don't know when. I don't have any information on when that game will resume. Earlier, we told you there may have been reports of cracks at Candlestick. Apparently, right now, there are no reports of any structural damage, so that is good news. There's 62,000 fans out there to watch the A's and the Giants go at it tonight. So it's going to be a mess getting all of those people out of there. Once again, the Bay Bridge is closed. A major section of the Bay Bridge has fallen. A 50-foot section broke off in the cantilever section. All right, and we now have the San Francisco Chief of Police, Frank Jordan, standing by. Hello, Chief.
They're continuing to get an estimate around the city of any kind of damage, and then we'll make a determination there.
We seem to be having trouble with that. We were trying to bring you a live shot of apparently the Chief of Police involved in some type of emergency services activity. We will try to bring you that shot. We've got our crews running everywhere, of course, right now to bring you all of this information. I have a late report in right now that BART is not running. They are trying to see if there is a train stuck in the tube. Certainly if there is a train stuck in the tube, those people are extremely frightened right now. We don't know if there is any damage. We haven't heard of any damage to that. We had a report earlier, as I was mentioning, the Bay Bridge had a 50-foot section of it broke off. Leslie Brinkley was telling you that there may have been 2 people on that section. They apparently escaped without injury. Fortunately, if you're heading anywhere near the Bay Bridge, please do not do that. We also have a report that the Cypress section of 880 is gone. We have live pictures of that for you a little bit earlier. A major chunk of it just dropped right down. We don't know if anybody there was injured. We are still trying to get information coming in right now. KGO was knocked off the air at 5:05 completely. Our television monitors, everything went down. People were grabbing onto walls thinking, well, it's just another shaker. But then the shaking started in earnest and went on for at least 60 seconds, maybe more. And when we saw the ceiling tiles and the lights fall and smelled the burning,
your office is a mess.
Then, then we knew we were in trouble. Okay, now we have a live shot of Corte Madera in Marin County, the big village shopping center there. Looks as though the shops there were evacuated. We've had reports of evacuations at Pier 39. George Lang, our cameraman, is out there. George, can you hear me? Can you give us an eyewitness view of what's going on there right now?
Yeah, Cheryl, things seem to be quieting down here. Most of this shopping center was evacuated just after the quake. Things in Marin County do not seem to be as severe as other parts of the Bay Area. Numerous fire hydrants seem to be flooding the streets over here. Obviously, all the traffic lights are out. 911 in most of Marin County has been a problem. They're working on that. The CHP is awfully busy checking out all the overpasses. 3rd Street in San Rafael, the overpass that crosses 101, seems to have quite a bit of damage.
Watch this. Give me some drag on this. Well, that's the Golden Gate Bridge, so that's in the in the Marina District.
Well, as you can see, they are at Candlestick Park. The game has been postponed. They've already picked up the bases, and the biggest problem tonight will be getting home because the Bay Bridge has been closed. As we showed you earlier, there is a 50-foot section of the bridge that has just collapsed. It's fallen down to the lower level. You can see at least one fire in San Francisco. Earlier tonight, Ted Koppel reported there were at least 2 fires. Number of problems, and you can understand that trying to get transmissions here and there, and with helicopters and the magic of television, you're going to have a number of technical problems during a night like this. Just basically to recap, if you're just getting home, at about 5:04 this afternoon, a very powerful earthquake up in Northern California. It measured 6.9 on the Richter scale. I am told that the epicenter is Hollister at 60 miles southeast of San Francisco and 50 miles northeast of Monterey. Now, there is major damage in the San Benito and Santa Clara counties. Here in the valley, most people have felt it all over. We've had reports from as far down as in Kings County, in the area of Corcoran. We have a report of power is out in Los Banos. There are some down power lines in Atwater. They felt it in Dos Palos. They felt it in Coalinga. You know, it's always interesting when we hear from the folks in Coalinga after they went through that powerful quake just a few years ago. A woman at the police department said it felt like it would never quit. Again, referring, of course, to the big quake that hit there in 1983. And again, the quake was felt in Sacramento, 90 miles northeast of San Francisco. It knocked out phones and power, including electricity, to the Associated Press Bureau in San Francisco. Again, a powerful earthquake that measured 6.9 on the Richter scale. Now you can see the map, and you can see how far the Bay Bridge. It's only a few miles from Candlestick Park to the Bay Bridge, and all kinds of damage in the San Francisco area. I can scan through my wire copy here. It said that it knocked out telephone service and radio and television stations across hundreds of miles. Power was knocked out at Candlestick Park a half hour before the start of the game, and it sent players rushing from the dugouts. However, supposedly there is no damage to the park. We did hear of one report that there was a half-inch crack in the upper level of Candlestick. You are seeing a live picture of San Francisco right now. You see right along the coastline, you can see that there is another fire.
That was me. I turned it down.
Again, San Francisco getting the major brunt of this earthquake, measured 6.9, and so far we heard from the police chief, and he says that they are still trying to size up the damage there. They have an Office of Emergency Service in basically every county of California, and what they do is when there is a major event like this, people call in to check in. They are in charge of, so large of an area, and they basically, try and do a head count and injuries, damage, whether power is out, what kind of utilities might be out. If you're thinking about calling the Bay Area right now to check on a loved one, don't, because... All right, let's go to the network for a special report.
Good evening, I'm Ted Koppel. There has been, as you may know by now, a rather severe earthquake measuring 6.5 on the Richter scale in San Francisco. You are looking at a live picture of a major fire in the Bay Area. I believe in just a moment, if the camera keeps on pulling back, you may be able to see the Golden Gate Bridge in the background. Those fires, and there are several of them that are currently blazing in the San Francisco Bay Area, are believed to have been caused by ruptured gas mains. But what has been happening, to bring you up to speed, is that the earthquake began at 8:04, that's Pacific Daylight Time, rather 5:04 Pacific Daylight Time, 8:04 Eastern Daylight Time. The electricity at Candlestick Park, where the third game of the World Series was just about to get underway, was knocked out. Within the past few minutes, the acting commissioner of baseball, Fay Vincent, has just announced that tonight's game has been suspended. They are at the moment trying to evacuate Candlestick Park, which is further south in the Bay Area. You are right now looking at San Quentin, I believe. No, yes, San Quentin. No, that is not San Quentin, forgive me, but I should point out to you that that was Treasure Island we were just looking at, that the Bay Bridge, which connects Oakland and San Francisco, has lost a 50-foot span. There is at least one vehicle that is trapped in that area. You're looking at video of that right now, and I think if the camera moves in a little bit closer, you will see the one vehicle that is trapped. There is at least one wire service report of some people who were seen floating in the water below. I have not seen that on any video, have not heard it confirmed anywhere, but there have been several segments of highway that have been buckled. My ABC Sports colleague Al Michaels, I believe, can you hear me, Al? Are you still at Candlestick Park?
Nothing, okay. What is he doing? He's doing a straight lead?
Al, can you hear me? Al Michaels?
This is Al Michaels. I'm in our production truck. You're looking at a fire, obviously, in the city of San Francisco. Just to relate what it felt like at Candlestick Park, and I have lived in California for the better part of 20 years. Fortunately, there was no jolt. There was no question once it started that I knew it was an earthquake, and I think most people in this area knew immediately it was an earthquake, and then you wait for either a jolt or for it to stop. It was a steady sort of shake and roll, and it was an extremely uneasy moment because we just happened to be on camera doing our pregame show, and the sense I got for a split second was that we were going backwards. And in fact, where we would sit in the mezzanine, an overhanging booth, we were susceptible to being a part of the collapse of the upper deck, in addition to falling down below or having it collapse down below. You're looking now at a shot of the cantilever section of the Bay Bridge. That is not the main section, but that apparently is where, from what I can tell right now, the major damage has been done. It is the primary link, of course, between the cities of San Francisco and Oakland, and it's graphically illustrated right there. Fortunately, and there, of course, is a car in between the collapsed sections. We have, of course, from our vantage point here and from what we know, I'm sure you have far more information about that, Ted, but all I can say is that very, very fortunately for some 60,000 people at Candlestick Park, the epicenter was not that close to the ballpark, but certainly as unnerving an experience as I can recall by far in 20 years of living in California. We understand now, as you look at a fire in San Francisco that appears to me to be somewhere in the neighborhood of the Marina District. We have Gary Thorne, who is still in the ballpark with the Commissioner of Baseball, Fay Vincent. Gary, can you hear me?
Well, thank you very much. Commissioners obviously have been very busy here since this has occurred. Commissioner, tell us exactly what the situation is as far as the games are concerned.
Well, we'll wait to see tomorrow. We hope to play the third game here, but we obviously have to check the stadium and be sure there's no damage that would put anybody at risk.
What was the initial information that you have from the people here at the stadium as to whether or not there might be any structural damage?
Well, there are some cracks. I don't think anybody's in a position to evaluate them. We'll get that done tomorrow and try to make a judgment early in the day whether we can play tomorrow night.
Tell us about the process you went through here once yourself. What was your reaction to it? Because you, like many of us, have not been through one before.
Well, I didn't know enough to be frightened. I was standing and started to shake, and at first I thought it was a jet. And my wife said, "Oh, it's an earthquake," and I realized then that we were having an earthquake.
What will you do now tonight? Will there be more meetings tonight with anyone in particular?
You know, I have no idea, Gary. I'm waiting here to see the stadium evacuate. I think people have handled this very nicely. The police and the people in the stadium have done a superb job. I'm very pleased. We need to get everybody out of here before it gets dark, which was the governing factor in the decision to call the game.
You lost all the power in here, so without any electricity, obviously, you weren't going anywhere.
We couldn't play, but even more importantly, we couldn't take a chance on having people here when it got dark. The governing factor was to get people to leave while there was enough light.
And seemingly things have been very orderly down here. There's been no problem. There was one fan who suffered some sort of an attack and was taken down to the bench. One of the interesting things, Commissioner, was the players and their wives leaving as the wives came down and children onto the field to go with their husbands.
Well, yes. I think a lot of people felt they were better off at the pitcher's mound. But it was a very nice performance by everybody involved, and I commend all those who participated, including the fans. I think the fans of baseball were terrific.
Will the game go on tomorrow if there are not structural damages here that would prevent people from coming in?
I would think so, yes. We need to talk to the police and be sure we know enough about the entire community. We don't know anything now, and we'll make that judgment in the morning.
If the ballpark was structurally damaged so that you could not put people back in here, would you consider playing elsewhere, say Oakland?
Well, we'll see about that tomorrow. I don't know what our options are, but we'll look at them all in the morning.
Will the final decision on that be yours?
Yes, it will.
Okay. That's the Commissioner, Fay Vincent, joining us. Thank you very much for doing that. And obviously a large crowd still gathered on the field. Al?
And Gary, we're back here in the production truck, and it's funny. I think everybody at first oohed and awed and didn't quite know what had happened, and you get the sense that people are almost more nervous now as the reality of what has taken place begins to sink in. At first, you knew you were a part of something historic, sitting through an earthquake in a ballpark preparatory to a World Series game, and now, of course, just in walking out in the last few minutes, everybody is exhaling, probably 3 times as hard as they normally would. And right now we have Gary Thorne back out in front of the Giants dugout right now, and let's check in again with him.
Down here on the field at this time, the commissioner's biggest concern was to get people out of the stands because of, obviously, if there are structural damages here, it would pose a danger to the fans, and this ballpark being packed, they wanted them out. So the initial decision was, we've lost power. We've got to get people out of here before we can assess what kind of structural damages. We know there are at least some minor cracks that occurred. It was very scary down on the field when it happened. If you look up here at Candlestick Park, there's a cement overhang that goes all the way around the stadium. When the earthquake occurred, those cement overhangs were literally bouncing up and down, and there are people underneath those who are seated in that upper level. So that's the problem that we had. I have not even had a chance to meet the security officer, so let me get your name first.
Yeah, I'm Commander Nelson, in charge of the police operation here at Candlestick.
First of all, let me say congratulations on the job you did here, because things were handled in a very smooth fashion, getting people out. What is the status, number one, right now, of clearing the yard?
Right now we have our traffic units and our exterior units set up in a post-game configuration. Everything is going very smoothly as far as getting the stadium evacuated. We've made announcements that the game has been postponed due to a partial power failure. Once we get an assessment of the entire stadium, then we'll make a determination whether or not the game will be played tomorrow or at some later date, whether it's going to be played at Candlestick. In the meantime, we were asking people just to hold on to their tickets as the rain checks will be honored, and as people leave, we're asking them to turn to specific radio stations.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
KCR 68, which is the Giants flagship station, which will have traffic updates.
A partial
KCO 81 and KCBS 74.
Just a moment.
Today's game has been postponed. Once again, today's game has been postponed. Tickets for today's game may be turned in for tomorrow's game. You treat your tickets just like a raid check. Use the raid check portion of today's ticket for tomorrow's game. We asked at this time.
One final question we'd ask is, our reports are there are some minor structural problems. Do you have any reports on that?
So far, I have heard that there are some minor cracks in the stadium, and around the city we've had several minor problems which are being addressed at this time. We have a command post set up. Being in San Francisco, we have a regular contingency plan that has gone into effect for the city. We have a command post set up citywide. We have a command post set up here in the stadium, and everything is being run at this time just very smoothly. Everyone has responded very well, very calmly. The evacuation is going very well.
Thank you very much. Al, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Gary. And frankly, everybody just kind of sat there. They were calm, and there was no panic in the stands, but of course nobody was given any instruction because we had lost power. Now you're looking at part of the freeway section, as you know, and again, I don't have communication with New York, and I'm sure Ted probably has more information than I do, but a portion of the Bay Bridge, the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge, that is the main span. Then you have Yerba Buena Island and Treasure Island coming into the picture. Then there is the cantilevered portion, and this is a double-decker bridge, and what happens is the upper level goes from Oakland or from the East Bay into San Francisco, and the lower level carries one-way traffic from San Francisco across the bay and into Oakland. And a portion, as you can see, of the upper level has collapsed onto the lower level of the Bay Bridge. The cantilever portion, that would be about, I would estimate, a mile to a mile and a half from the shoreline of the East Bay. So obviously a major disaster, and as I mentioned before and can only reiterate, very, very fortunately at Candlestick Park, everybody appears to be safe, everybody appeared to be okay, and there is no visible damage in the ballpark. Now you're looking back into San Francisco. That's I believe Highway 280, a freeway that parallels the Bayshore Freeway, which is Highway 101, one of the two primary north-south links from the peninsula and from the ballpark into the city of San Francisco. That it would be normally the less heavily traveled. Most of the traffic would be on Highway 101, which would be west of that. A look at where this earthquake was centered in San Benito, and you can see San Francisco sitting at the head of the peninsula. Oakland would be just to the right of San Francisco across the bay. And again, we here in the truck do not have any further information in terms of magnitude and the exact epicenter. There are some fires, obviously, in the city of San Francisco. Again, as we take a look at that, that appears to be what would be the Marina District, not far from Fisherman's Wharf. At 5:04 Pacific time, we understand, was when the earthquake occurred. And we at that point, of course, were coming on the air, getting ready to begin our telecast of the third game of the World Series. And again, at Candlestick Park, there was no panic. Californians sort of react with wryness, I suppose, and irony, and you kind of give each other a knowing shrug. Hey, we know what's happened. And then, as I say, the reality has really begun to sunk in. Meanwhile, Joe Morgan was down on the field. We were preparing to lead to a Joe Morgan interview. Next to Joe was Willie Mays, and Tim McCarver and I and Jim Palmer were in the booth, and there it was at that particular point. And as we say, or as we said before, in the booth, here was us. Here we were at that particular point. My grammar is not particularly terrific at this point, but I think you'll all understand.
Well, I was watching thinking that they were just replaying a tape of what happened, but clearly what has been happening all evening long has just happened again. You heard Al Michaels. There have been electrical breakups all evening long. The key part of the story, as by now I'm sure you will have gathered, is that there has been a rather major earthquake in San Francisco, ranging somewhere between 6.5 and 7 on the Richter scale. You see one of the fires that we assume has been caused by the tremors One of my colleagues here, our political director, Hal Bruno, who's also a volunteer fireman, tells me that what frequently happens is that these fires are a consequence of ruptured gas lines. So there you see a fire blazing with what I believe is the Golden Gate Bridge directly behind, but it is the other bridge, the Bay Bridge, that Al Michael was talking about just a moment ago, where a 30 to 50 foot span of the upper level has collapsed onto the lower level. And of course, among the other things that will have happened this evening, as all the fans from Oakland who came over to the San Francisco side to see the third game of the World Series, which parenthetically has of course been canceled now by the Commissioner of Baseball, Fay Vincent, all those people somehow have to get back to Oakland. They won't be going back over the Bay Bridge. As you have seen over the course of the past few minutes, and there you see a span of highway that has also collapsed. No indication, parenthetically, of whether there have been any injuries or fatalities. You can tell an earthquake is such a random thing. You see people there standing around in an almost joking fashion, I guess relief as much as anything else. But only a few miles, and in some instances even a few hundred yards away, there may be people who have been badly injured by that same quake. And what we're looking at there is, I believe, a span, that segment that I was telling you about, the cantilevered segment of the Bay Bridge that Al Michaels was talking about a few moments ago. It collapsed, and because it collapsed, the upper level collapsed onto the lower level. Clearly, that bridge can no longer be used to connect San Francisco with Oakland. So the folks who went to see the game in San Francisco today won't be able to go back via the bridge, and there have been other reports, unconfirmed as yet, that BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit, that is the partially underground subway segment, that there has been at least one train that has been stalled in one of those tunnels. So I suspect they may be very, very cautious now in terms of allowing more passengers in there. Now, a couple of my colleagues, Bruce Hall and Mark Nelson, are standing by phone. Mark, you're still out, I gather, at the ballpark. Anything new that you can tell us from out there?
Ted, can you hear me, Ted?
We hear you rather faintly, and if we don't hear you any more clearly than that, go ahead, Mark Nelson. Can you hear me? Mark Nelson?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, there's power failures again in various parts of the park area that I'm near. People are filing out. It appears to be very orderly. There are buses around. People are loading buses, and they're leaving the park area. It appears to me most of the television trailers and foreign broadcast trailers that are around here have all lost power as well. From what I can see, there appears to be no lights on the towers inside the stadium. That's about all I can tell you right now, Ted.
Mark, since you are living in San Francisco, maybe you can fill in what I was trying to explain to our viewers a moment ago, and that is, how do the people who are now on the San Francisco side of the Bay, how do they get over to the Oakland side, since clearly they cannot take the Bay Bridge?
Well, Ted, I don't live in San Francisco. I live in Los Angeles, and I'm interested to find that out myself.
All right. Well, how about Bruce Hall? Bruce, you're standing by also on the phone. Can you hear me?
Yes. The normal alternate route would probably be the San Mateo Bridge, which is the bridge just south of the Bay Bridge, but that has been closed for inspection, according to KGO. They are inspecting it for damage. There's not known damage as of a few minutes ago, but that bridge has been closed, which leaves the Dunbarton Bridge, which is a very small bridge, several miles farther south. It takes off from Palo Alto. And otherwise, you'd have to drive either the Golden Gate Bridge and the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, or through San Jose and around and up the other shore. But part of 880, which is the road that would come up from San Jose to Oakland, has collapsed. I think it's nearer the Bay Bridge, but I'm not sure. I think that may have been the part of the freeway that you showed earlier that had collapsed.
Bruce, I'll tell you what, maybe you could just fill us in a little bit on what you know in terms of injuries, possibly even fatalities and damage. We have seen some aerial video of what look to be some rather serious fires. Do you have any idea of how widespread they are and of whether there have been any casualties?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
All right. We're going to go back now to Al Michaels, who is still standing by at Candlestick Park. Al, I assume that you're looking at the same video that I'm seeing right now, which is a terrible fire somewhere in San Francisco. Do you know the area well enough to be able to tell us where that is?
Ted, I'm not certain that I'm seeing exactly what you're seeing, but I do see a fire. I know there is a fire in what would be the Marina District, or very close to it. It's not far from Fisherman's Wharf. It would be in the northern section of the city. It appeared to me maybe a half a mile in from San Francisco Bay, and that appears to be the most serious of the fires that I'm able to see at this particular point.
All right, before you start to brief us all on what is happening there right now, let me just point out that President Bush was attending a dinner for Republican governors in Washington this evening. When he learned about the earthquake in California, the president told reporters that about an hour from now, the Secretary of Transportation, Skinner, will go to California to make a first-hand inspection of the damage. The president also said that officials of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, are being called to the White House tonight to start mapping out assistance plans. Just a few miles to the south of you there, Al, at San Francisco Airport, you should know the airport has been closed. And I don't know whether that's just while they are waiting to see if there are any more aftershocks or whether they need to conduct an inspection there. But fill us in on the scene now at Candlestick, would you?
Well, right now, everybody appears to be safe, and everybody evacuated. It was a most curious sort of reaction. I don't know if we had communication before, Ted. I could not hear you, but you know, I have lived in the state for 20 years and in this area for 12, so those of us who have experience living through these things knew exactly what it was. When it stops, there's a tremendous sense of relief. There's a wryness and irony and all of that, and you sort of shrug your shoulders and you say, well, you know, we've been through this. But frankly, because of the magnitude of this and then the thought process beginning to settle in about 20 minutes later of what might have been, and I can't tell you how fortunate we were, because Candlestick Park was built in 1958. I know there have been some upgraded standards in regard to safety for the prevention of earthquakes through the years, but it's a double-decker park with a mezzanine. I had mentioned before, our broadcast position is in that mezzanine. I had the sense just for a second or two that we were going backwards and out, and that we were going to go down into the lower deck and the upper deck would collapse. And Ted, I can't tell you that it's been a terrible tragedy, obviously, and I don't know what the damage is, and obviously the Bay Bridge, a portion of that has collapsed, and we don't know the casualties, but we were very, very lucky at Candlestick Park that the epicenter was not that close to this ballpark, which is 31 years old.
Actually, Al, the epicenter, I've just been handed a piece of wire copy. The epicenter was 10 miles north of Santa Cruz, about 50 miles south of San Francisco. So presumably, as we go on into the evening, we'll be getting reports of what's been happening closer to the epicenter. But obviously, right now, the focus of attention has been and continues to be the immediate Bay Area, San Francisco, and the area right around Candlestick Park. We heard Commissioner of Baseball Fay Vincent telling Gary Thorne before that the game obviously was canceled for tonight, and he'll be making a decision later on as to whether or not the third game of the World Series can be played there at Candlestick Park. I don't expect you to crystal ball it, Al, but just on the basis of what we have seen here this evening, can you imagine that they can conduct those kinds of inspections in the next 24 hours and have everybody back there in that park tomorrow night?
Well, again, drawing on the fact that I've lived here all of these years, yes, they've been able to do those things. I think, you know, you've got other problems here. You've got the psyche of this entire area incredibly affected by this. You're going to have huge, huge traffic jams all over the Bay Area. I mean, it's obvious that the extent of the damage to the collapsed section of the Bay Bridge is sufficient that that bridge is going to be closed for who knows how long. I understand, I heard an earlier report, Ted, when they were linking me with you, that the San Mateo Bridge is also being closed at least for inspection. And so what you would have to do to get from San Francisco to Oakland would be to either drive down to the Dumbarton Bridge, which connects Menlo Park and in Fremont, a very small bridge, or drive all the way to San Jose and come back up, or proceed to the far North Bay and come back down over the Golden Gate Bridge. So, you know, obviously this is one of the things that people are thinking about in this area, the continuation of this World Series, when it will take place. But I think uppermost in most people's minds in this region right now are things of another nature.
No, you're exactly right. And I should point out that this earthquake, and perhaps we should just tell those people who are tuning in now for the first time and who perhaps thought they were going to catch this game in the third or fourth innings, the third game of the World Series has been canceled. What you are looking at right now is the reason why. There has been an earthquake in San Francisco. You're looking at a piece of videotape now of some cars that were trapped when the upper section of the Bay Bridge collapsed onto the lower section of the Bay Bridge. That is the bridge that connects Oakland with San Francisco. The quake... yeah, go ahead.
You hear me right now? Because just to point something out in case it has not been, this bridge is a double-decker bridge. It is one way from east to west in the direction we are looking right now. In other words, that car was heading from Oakland into San Francisco, and then there is the section underneath, which is one way going from San Francisco to Oakland. So I don't have to tell you that in the best of times, that is an incredibly heavily traveled bridge, not just during rush hour, but at several points during the day. And you can see in that shot, if you are seeing the same thing I am, Ted, the panoramic shot of San Francisco, that fire appears to be, as I say, in the Pacific Heights or Marina District. You saw the Golden Gate Bridge, and we've not heard any reports in regard to structural damage there, which links Marin County and San Francisco. Panning now, Fisherman's Wharf would be at the shoreline there. There's downtown San Francisco. There is the main portion of the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. That is not the portion at which the collapse has taken place. Yerba Buena Island and Treasure Island is in the middle, and then there is that cantilevered portion, and that is where the collapse of the Bay Bridge has taken place, Ted.
Now, the fires, we just saw one of the fires over there on the San Francisco side. I should point out that fires have also been reported in Berkeley and in Oakland. So this is clearly an earthquake that has made its effects felt for many, many miles all around. As I mentioned a few moments ago to you, Al, the epicenter is about 50 miles south of San Francisco, but clearly the attention of the world this evening has been focused on San Francisco, and as we get more information later on. Our colleague Peter Jennings is sitting up in New York with our San Francisco Bureau Chief Ken Kashiwahara. Maybe the two of them can fill us in a little bit. And again, one of the things, the subway system, Peter, maybe you could ask Ken, that BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit, how is that going to be affected by this?
Well, Ted, by the way, first of all, you and Al Michaels particularly done a superb job of, we've been listening to you here for half an hour. BART has already been evacuated in some places, Ken. Some people got trapped in tunnels and have moved out. But other than that, it's the same story there. It's been fairly orderly, hasn't it?
I think so. In any kind of an earthquake like this, they would shut down BART protectively and then simply inspect. I haven't heard any reports of any damage on the BART system. There could have been, but the stopping of the system is routine in any event like this.
This is something that most Californians living in your neck of the woods expect to happen at some point. You've had about 4,000 of these earthquakes in the last couple of years of a much minorer nature.
Well, expecting, I'd say this is something we've all feared, yes, and this is the worst time of the day it could possibly have happened. This is what earthquake officials had feared the most, that is an earthquake happening in the middle of rush hour with thousands and thousands of cars on highways. So, yeah, we live with that fear.
And do you also live, as we go back and have a look at some of these aerials that we've been able to see of San Francisco, not much point, I think, in looking at us when we can be looking at San Francisco. Do you also have the sense, as citizens of San Francisco, that it's going to be happy and that you're going to behave in a certain way?
No, I think there's a fear about that, too. We've all been told what to do when earthquakes hit, what to expect, and how to behave. But I suppose there's always that feeling in the back of our minds that we won't really behave that way. The worst thing that the officials fear is panic among the population.
There's so many earthquakes because this is where the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate meet. And I was looking as we were listening to Ted and Al Michaels talk, and as we look again at the Oakland Bay Bridge, that in the 3 years since the middle of 1986, you've had just over 4,400 earthquakes of some nature. You must never get used to it.
Well, but don't forget, some of those earthquakes are either further away than this one was, or they are not as strong, and therefore we don't feel them as much. Yes, we have gotten used to feeling the rolling motions, but certainly nothing like this.
We've had tremendous benefit from having Al Michael there as well, who grew up, and that's the Marina District of San Francisco, which, as Al has pointed out on a couple of occasions, is not far from Fisherman's Wharf for visitors to California. There's no hard evidence yet that that fire actually began as a result of the earthquake, the epicenter of which you've probably heard already was about 10 miles north of Santa Cruz and 50 miles south of San Francisco. But the information beyond the basics, Ken, has been fairly slow to come in. How well equipped, both mentally and physically, are the fire department and the police department for this eventuality?
I think they were as well equipped as they could be. They go through drills every year, earthquake drills, and that's the primary practice. That is to train firefighters and the police department departments in handling something like this. And I might point out, as we looked at that fire, that's what officials fear the most: the fires. As you may remember, in 1906, when the big earthquake hit San Francisco.
8.3 on the Richter scale it was, right?
That's what destroyed the city, the fires.
The fire. And now, of course, it's even enhanced to some extent by the fact that there are gas mains all over the city, and you start gas fires, which are extremely difficult to fight.
San Francisco, though, was, I'd say, fairly well prepared in the sense that buildings over the last number of years have been built to withstand strong earthquakes, and I think that's probably why you don't see even more damage than we're hearing about.
You have very, very tough city restrictions.
We do, and the newer buildings are certainly built to withstand stronger earthquakes than the one that hit today.
What's the regulation? What does the city require or the state require that you be prepared to deal with? Well, just to remind people, the 6.5, there was no Richter scale in 1906. 6.5 on the Richter scale is classified as a quake which can do very severe damage. Not quite sure what's going on here.
All right, Peter, I'll tell you what. Let me take it back from you for a moment, please. And you and I are sitting. Parenthetically, you're sitting in New York, I'm sitting in Washington. Fortunately for us, if not for him, Al Michaels is still sitting in San Francisco. Al, where physically are you at Candlestick right now?
Right now, Ted, we are in our production truck, which is just outside the ballpark, clear of the overhang. And I think that's very important, too. One of the things that you're trained to do as a Californian is to make sure there is nothing above you. I know when I am at home and I feel that an earthquake is in progress, I will normally go outside as quickly as I possibly can and get away from anything that might fall on top of you. And again, I mentioned, you know, the one thing that I think I'd like to point out here too, Ted, is that when word began to circulate at the ballpark that the magnitude of this earthquake was in the 6 to 6.9 range, I knew immediately that the epicenter had to be 50, 75, maybe 100 miles from the ballpark. I was remarking about that to Tim McCarver as we were sitting through some of the aftershocks, because I know when I lived in this region in the city of Menlo Park, one morning I was awakened by what I felt was the big one, as we've all come to expect in California, only to find out that the magnitude of the quake was 3.1, and then to find out the epicenter was a half a mile from my house. So obviously the key is to be as far away from the epicenter as possible to be able to avoid any damage. And all I can say, Ted, is thank God the epicenter was far enough away from Candlestick Park so that this structure remained erect.
Yeah, well, of course, that doesn't do a lot, though, for the folks of Santa Cruz. This took place, the epicenter was just 10 miles north of Santa Cruz. Let me just debrief you for a moment, Al, in terms of your expertise as a Californian on earthquakes. 10 miles away, 6.5 to 7 on the Richter scale. Can we infer anything of what is likely to have happened in Santa Cruz tonight?
Obviously, there has to be major damage. Again, Santa Cruz is it's not really a metropolitan area. It's a lovely little community, and there are other communities that wind their way up through Highway 17 towards San Jose. And then if you would proceed south from Santa Cruz down Highway 1, you'd eventually come to Monterey. So I would suspect, you know, this earthquake was obviously felt all over what is known as the Bay Area, also the South Bay as well. And, you know, it's an ironic thing that San Jose is now the biggest city in the Bay Area. So there were certainly after effects of what took place parks in the city of San Jose and places like Gilroy and all the way down the coast toward perhaps San Luis Obispo.
Let's just briefly recapitulate for those members of our audience who may have joined us within the past few minutes. Obviously, the third game of the World Series has been canceled. The Commissioner of Baseball, Fay Vincent, said he will make a decision sometime tomorrow.
On my next show.
Today at 4 on 47.
You probably know that the flavor of
Helen and Myra share a house, but when company comes to the door, it's always Myra who knows first.
Good girl.
Myra is the short one. She arrived a week ago and brought the gift of hearing to Helen Snedden, who's deaf. It was love at first sight.
She, first of all, is great company for me, and she makes my life easier.
Snedden used to have to keep a constant eye out for repairmen and other visitors. Now Myra does the work for her.
Oftentimes the dogs sense, there's an intuitive sense that this person truly needs them.
Myra was rescued from a dog pound to be a hearing ear dog. Dogs for the Deaf, an organ organization, has put dogs like Myra in homes across the country. The animals are trained much like seeing eye dogs. Helen Snedden is grateful to have a roommate who takes